Hey, do you trust yourself? Do you trust yourself? Do you go with your first gut instinct? Or do you always second guess yourself? I mean, have you ever been there where you've been taking a test and your gut was telling you, hey, the answer is B? Maybe you had a feeling about something and you decided against your best in not best interest, but your your inner voice that was telling you something, and you did the complete opposite and felt so much regret afterwards. I mean, what if I told you you could make decisions without that regret? Making better decisions overall, and just like being in a place where you're just trusting. I mean, do you have trouble trusting others when they tell you something? A lot of lack of trust in others is actually a lack of trust in ourselves. Because if we trust ourselves and we trust what that inner voice is saying, and our inner voice is telling us to do what someone else is telling us, it's actually way easier to just trust someone else. Today I want to talk about, trusting yourself and what that looks like. Why don't we trust ourselves? What comes up that stops us from doing so? And a lot of it is conscious versus unconscious thinking or subconscious thinking. Our unconscious mind is super powerful, and a lot of times it processes things so quickly that consciously we're not able to really comprehend how quickly we can come up with an answer. In our school systems, we're taught to think with our conscious mind. We're taught to logically map everything out. We're taught to really dissect everything, and even making a pros and cons list and just going with what makes logical sense. Now, I'm not saying not to use logic. We want to make sure that we come up with the best decisions, and making, for example, a pro and con list to a problem or a potential option is great. What happens when you have the same in the pro section as you do in the con section, right? You have the same amount of pull one way as another. What do you do then? And why it's so important to trust ourselves, right? So many of the top successful people in the world are people that trust themselves. I mean, they don't bat an eye. They make a decision in a split second and don't turn back. So what happens is whenever we're faced with a decision, we try to consciously think about this, like, what's better for me? And we'll think about all the pros and cons. Sometimes we only think of the pros, sometimes we only think of the cons. I can tell you a lot of times, way more times than not, your gut reaction, your gut decision is by far the best one. I've gotten to a point where now I will briefly dissect something and I'll look at it and come up with a decision almost instantaneously. Like, what's the best? Okay, let's do that. Where I see a lot of people not trusting themselves is actually them being disconnected with that inner voice. What happens is, the more times you stop listening to it, like your inner voice tells you, hey, that person isn't the right person for you. This relationship is not the right relationship for you. And people will stay in that relationship for so long, even though they knew in their gut it wasn't the right fit. I mean, I can tell you, I've been there. I've been in relationships where, the thought of the what if, what if I'm leaving my soulmate? What if I'm doing all of this? It was tough. And deep down inside, my voice was telling me, hey, get the fuck out of this. This isn't for you. And I can tell you, the more times you don't listen to your voice, the voice gets softer and softer. When you don't trust yourself, it's like when you give someone advice, right? And imagine this person has a problem or is trying to make a decision, and you come up with fantastic advice and give it to them. And then they do the exact opposite. Then they come to you again with a problem or a decision, and you give them great advice. And then they do the exact opposite. After a while, you're just going to stop giving that advice, right? If you do give the advice, it's going to be a lot softer. It's not going to be as passionate. It's not going to be as loud. Same thing happens with your inner voice, with your unconscious voice, with your gut reaction. The longer we don't listen to it, the softer it gets. That's why it's so imperative to listen and trust yourself. So what really happens? Essentially, it's just thinking in two different ways. Consciously, we try to think of everything and we try to process everything. And sometimes there's way too much information for us to even process, right? Sometimes our intuition can pick things up that aren't in the statistics, that aren't in, what's consciously available to us. Our intuition's very strong. Like a woman's intuition. If you're a woman or a woman that has kids, they can sometimes feel or just get a sense, a knowing, like, oh my God, my kids are in trouble. How do they know that? It's just that unconscious intuition. And what happens is, when we're kids, we just trust that intuition, right? We just do without really thinking. And that's because we're doing and learning as we make mistakes. But as we make mistakes, our parents, our teachers, everyone tells us, oh no, you gotta do this. Think before you speak. Think before you act. All of those things eventually get ingrained in us. We start to develop strategies to not listen to that inner voice. And the longer we do it, the softer that voice gets. Exactly. I said it multiple times. And I can tell you from experience, I used to just do without thinking. I would say things without thinking. Now, it's one thing to be completely impulsive, and it's another thing to gather information and make a gut decision. So I'm not saying, going to buy a house and just, this one feels right. You want to make sure you do all your homework before you make any decision, first of all. Okay? But it's with that information, with all of that homework, that our unconscious mind can just process it super quickly and just come up with a decision as quick as a snap of a finger, right? And it's our responsibility to listen to that voice and trust ourselves. The more we trust ourselves, the louder that voice gets. And then these are cycles, right? You don't listen to yourself, the voice gets softer. The voice gets softer, so it's easier to not listen to it, and you don't listen to it, then it gets even softer, and then it goes on and on and on. Instead, if you listen to yourself, it gets louder. The louder it gets, the easier it is to listen to it because it's loud. You do it more often, the louder it gets, and then so on and so forth. So they're both cycles. It's your decision which cycle you choose. Are you going to listen to it or not? So I wanted to talk about how you can really start trusting yourself more, and in turn trusting others, right? First thing, it's something that helped me greatly, is called a pendulum. So a pendulum, some people think it's like some woo-woo stuff. It's not. Our unconscious mind controls our whole body. You don't consciously think of breathing. You don't consciously think of blinking all day. You don't consciously think of your heart beating. Your unconscious mind just makes it all happen. And your unconscious mind, makes all the... You consciously think, let me raise my arm, and your unconscious mind actually moves every single muscle to make sure that it does it, right? So our unconscious mind controls our muscles. And if you ask questions, and you're holding a pendulum, your unconscious mind will very slightly move. It's almost like a twitch, right? So I can ask the pendulum, show me yes. And then it's going this way. And then show me no. Now, I know it looks like I'm moving my hand. I'm not consciously moving my hand. So I can ask it a question and get a yes or no response. And this is a great way to really start getting inward and trusting yourself, right? Making decisions based on the answers that you get, based on your gut decision. Okay? So number 1 is pendulum. Number 2, whenever you have a gut reaction, a gut response, an immediate answer to something, go with it. Don't think about it, just go with it. Okay? At first, it will be tough. And the more times you do it, the easier it will get. And the more times you do it, the louder it gets. So it's even easier, guys. So number 2, just go with your gut. If you get no gut responses, definitely get a pendulum and look up pendulum work. I will create a video as well on pendulum, so wait for that. And third thing, to really trust yourself, is journaling. When you're making a decision and you make that decision, go back afterwards and journal about it. Journal about how you came up with the decision to do whatever you did. In the journaling process, you'll be made aware of exactly what you did to come up with that answer. And in that awareness, you will sometimes see flaws in how you were thinking, and your unconscious mind will start processing all that and saying, wow, that didn't serve us. We need to do things differently. And it'll start getting louder. Journaling is super powerful in any modality. Definitely trusting yourself is huge. So again, get a pendulum, trust your gut, and journal, right? And I want to make sure everyone trusts themselves. If everyone trusted themselves, man, this world would be such a better place. People would be so much happier. They wouldn't be in jobs that they know aren't right for them. And by the way, guys, I want you to, if there's a decision you need to make, if you've been stuck in a relationship, in a job that you just know at your core is not right for you, and you're just making excuses, I want you to take action today. Take the first step in saying enough is enough and listening to yourself. Okay? Remember, the more you trust yourself, the better your decision's gonna be. The better the decisions you make, the better life you will have. And you want to have a better life, don't you? You want to live to your fullest, right? So trust yourself today and make that decision. All right, guys, take care.